Guys, in 1995,
this is Auto Collabs.
Yes.
my dad excitedly
You had hair.
called us. I had hair. My dad excitedly calls the family out to the driveway. And in a feast your eyes upon this moment, points out what looks like the Breaking Bad meth RV.
Yeah. It's National Lampoon's.
Now,
Christmas
did your mother get called out with you, or was she out there already?
Yeah, no, she got called out, and we're all like, "What?" And he's like, "Da-da-da-da-ba." And we're like, "What is it?"
Do you have to get in that thing?
He's like, "An RV." I've never been rained on so much from the inside of a vehicle as I was in that RV.
Got it.
Why
But he
we
got a
talking
deal
about
on it.
RVs?
It's funny. My wife and I often talked probably, let's say 4 years ago and before. We were like, one day we're going to take an RV trip. We're going to take the trip, right? We're going to get the kids. We're going to get a great RV. We're going to drive across the country. And just like last week when we were away for our anniversary, we were kind of like, hey, remember we used to talk about that? Kind of like, you still want to do that? And like one of us was like, oh no. I was like, good, because I don't want to do that anymore either. Like,
if you're curious about whether or not you could do RVing and enjoy it, just go spend a week at a Motel 6.
no, it is not like that. It really depends on the RV. In your dad's RV, yeah, but like tour bus level RV, I'm in. But why are we talking about this, Kyle? You know why we're talking about
Why are we talking about this? It's because our guest on the pod today has an entire website dedicated to her and her family's RV makeover and adventure and road trip and all of that. And somehow we're going to figure out how that ties with the fact that she now works for ComplyAuto, a compliance arm of the automotive industry that is helping dealers.
We'll do it.
We're going to get to introduce you to Sherryl Nens with ComplyAuto. So let's just get to it. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I'm excited to have you here because just a few weeks ago, we got to hang out and meet you at ASOTU, and we had been on a couple calls before that, and it's always nice to actually like meet someone in person and get that interaction of like, oh, that's who you are, not on a Zoom call. So now I get to have that context instead of just being in Zoom.
So much better.
Yeah, and that was my first ASOTU, and I don't want to say I was doubtful, but like I just hadn't been, and yeah, it was a little skeptical, but it was not just another automotive convention, and I really liked it. So I like what you guys are doing, and you're kind of preaching what I've always preached about automotive is like we're so much more than that.
I love it. Yeah, that's like you just filled us all up.
Now you got all our juices, and we're all just fired up. We're gonna get on mission chat.
Oh, where's the book? I got Will's book too, and I've been reading it. So
yes,
awesome.
Triple good.
Yeah. Okay, so we ask a couple questions before people come on the show, and every once in a while we get super excited because of the volume of automotive interaction that you've had in your life. Take us back to like the very first time you were like, oh, automotive may be a place for me. Because I think it was at a pretty young age, right?
Well, it was, but it's funny. Like I was kind of maybe I'm a Debbie doubter all along. Like I wasn't positive of it, but I think like I mean, you asked when I really got started in automotive, and it may have been when I was like 7 years old. My dad never had boys, never wanted boys. He thought girls would be much easier to raise, but at the same time, he wanted to make sure that we did.
He also never had girls.
So he wanted to make sure that like we got into the things that he wanted, and that meant cars and guns. So
what state was this?
New Mexico and West Texas.
There you go. All right,
West Texas.
Texas. There
Got
we
it.
go.
Understand.
Shoe fits. All right, keep going.
Yeah, so I got like my first like creeper, like that slides underneath the car.
Oh yeah.
I was like 7, and then I think at 13 I was gifted what every girl wants on her 13th birthday was like an oil wrench. And every milestone, like like, you know, when you're driving and stuff and coming up in those driving years, I couldn't do anything before I could like prove myself and put something together. And one day my dear father, like, he told me, he was like, you know, when you were born, your grandfather bought you a 1965 Mustang. And this is when I was born in like 77, and we were going to remodel it. And we were going through my grandmother's garage, and he's like, and here's the steering wheel. I'm like, where's the car? And he was like, oh, well, he sold it at one point, but we'll. And so my father came and he had it all planned out. He bought me a 1979 Volvo mustard yellow station wagon. And it
That's a lot different.
Yeah, it died
A
on
lot
the
different.
and driving into the driveway. And so he promised me, like, hey, you can change the color, but we're going to do this right. And we had to take apart that entire car and put it back together and label it. And like, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Did you meet Patrice Banks at ASOTUCon by any chance?
I did. And I've never heard of her. And I was so excited. I was like, because my best girlfriend at NADA, Cameron Wilson, she and I had an idea. So bad of me. I'm so sorry. Stop ringing.
Oh, it's all good. It happens. It's live TV.
I know.
Like, not really. It is, but it isn't.
Oh, and it's my beautiful voice. It does not stop ringing for some reason. So just a second. I gotta like hang it up 3 times. I apologize, but yeah,
It's all good.
It's okay. When this happens, I usually throw my laptop away and go buy a new one. It's fine. You're handling it much better than I do.
I put do not disturb on everything, but Google always finds a way. Like, oh, you only did it on chat, not Google Voice. Oh well. But, yeah. You know, I met Patrice Banks, and she was very inspiring. Like my best girlfriend and I, we got in automotive about the same time, and we've had like similar ideas. Like, if only there was someone out there for the women. And I am like so proud of Patrice that she did it. So that's amazing.
So cool.
I'm glad that you met. I mean, it feels like, so continue the story, because we have to get from mustard yellow Volvo that you're disassembling with your dad to compliance and cookieless, right? Which is like what you're really passionate about now. And those two things may seem very far apart.
Well,
so paint the
let's
line.
make sure we get the pass through of, in my opinion, one of the greatest CEOs of Ford Motor Company too.
Yeah, Al Muali. Yeah, absolutely.
Make a pit stop there too.
And the fact that you lived in an RV with your family and YouTubed about it. There's so much to cover. So let's keep going.
My first job was at Jiffy Lube, and I kind of worked my way up, and I was running the store before I like left. And through college, I worked all through college there. And so, you know, like I was like literally 18 years old. And like, this is how naive I was. Like, people would say like, oh, there's the girl in Daisy Dukes. I didn't know what Daisy Dukes meant. Like, I guess it was in New Mexico. It was hot. I wore shorts with my like Jiffy Lube polo. And, but I had like a team of, you know, like 10 techs. Like I had upper techs and lower techs, like doing oil changes. And they would always make me go out and sell and upsell like the air filters and things. And, you know, a total $4 like oil change for like their transmission and stuff. So it was fun. But then I actually had a college professor who knew I worked at Jiffy Lube, and Ford Motor Company was coming as a career fair. And he was like, you really need to go interview with them. I've set up like one of the students that was there, or people that was there, was his former student from, I went to the Harvard of the Rio Grande, University of New Mexico. Go Lobos. So little school in New Mexico. And he knew Miles, and he set up an interview with me for Miles at Ford Motor Company. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about automotive. And like, that's what I do with my dad. And I got selected like to go up to the assessment center. Back in the day, they had an assessment center, which was really grueling. They kind of put you through like a full day interview, like where you would have like clean out your inbox, and then they'd have like an angry customer, like it was somebody from Ford, come in and like be angry, and like how would you handle that? And then you had to like do a mock like wholesale to an angry dealer, and so they would put you in those situations. And then I passed assessment, and I got an internship, and I worked for Ford for 17 years, including with Alan Mullally on dealer relations. So I got to meet a lot of the top execs. But Alan, like, he was just, I mean, he was one of those inspiring leaders that, I mean, he knew everyone's name. He treated you all the same. He was just an amazing human. And so I very much miss him. Like when he was leaving, I was like, Alan, take me with you. And
so were you there through the Alan leadership through like 08, 09?
Oh yeah. And then that, like, watching him like overhaul the company, like if you've read his book, He implemented the business, the BPR, business plan review. And so, that I was kind of in the field at that time. And then I got up and I was launched the Ford Fiesta. And I'll never forget, I had
What a car. Holy cow. Speaking of yellow Volvo, sorry. No.
Yeah, I know.
Every time I hear it, I just in my head I hear.
My husband calls me the small car killer because I launched the Ford Fiesta and the EcoSport. So neither one lasted.
Just ahead of its time. Should have been
They
Navy.
were ahead of its time, but I had a leader when I was on the Fiesta who will remain unnameless, and I read Alan's book, and like we had a situation on how long, like our day supply, we were at like a 2-day supply on Fiesta, and how long it took to get those cars where they were, like to America and to our consumers was too long. And so, you were supposed to put red, yellow, or green. And like his book is like, if it's red, it's red. We all work on it. And I put red. And I just got like yelled at and talked down to. And how could I do this? And like, you never get red on a BPR. And I was like, this goes against the whole process.
Isn't that the point of the thing? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an interesting time. But
he kind of wanted it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Alan wanted, people were not putting red because they wanted to seem impressive, but he was the kind of leader that actually wanted to see red. He didn't want the fakeness. He wanted,
right, let's bring up those issues and then we'll work on them. And so I was, I don't know, it just felt very disingenuous to me. So, fast forward, my husband retired from Ford, and so we kind of moved out of Detroit. And so I went to another company that did guns. So the cars and guns.
Covered all the bases for Dad.
Dad must have been beaming. He was beaming with pride.
Yeah, he's like, you got me all my super duties I needed, and now I can get all the scopes I want. Like,
yeah.
So then we had like a existential crisis and decided to pack up and just like see the world and spend time with our kids. Like, why wait for someday? Let's make that today. And we named it after our kids. Like the RV was like they're Brighton and Daisy. And so we said bright days ahead because, in good times or bad times, there's always bright days ahead. So
I love it.
I love it. And then I ran into an old dealer friend of mine and said like, hey, we have this company called ComplyAuto. And I met the CEO, Chris Cleveland, and it was a startup. And I was just really passionate about like what he was doing. He was helping dealers, try to simplify like a very complex problem. And he was doing it for like the right reasons. And I just loved that. And so that's how I got involved at ComplyAuto.
Yeah. So how do you transfer this passion of like cars and trucks and Jiffy Lube and,
guns.
Guns to like compliance, which is a very like legal driven, a little bit of glasses on the nose, like
nerd. How do you make compliance fun? Yeah.
Yeah. Like where does that, how do you transfer the vibe of like what you've done, what you've always known, the kid that was getting under the car with the oil wrench into this thing that is like riddled with, government compliance and regulation and fear on the deal, all of these things that almost feel disjunct from that passion. How have you transferred that?
Right. Well, it's a great question. And I think like my background, because I worked with dealers for so long, and that's actually how I got the job working with like senior leadership. It was on dealer relations, was that I was kind of the voice of the dealer. And I really got to know some really great dealers in my time that took time to even mentor me and like, how about you come off the road for Ford, like, and work in the back end for 2 weeks. And so I really got to know their businesses and them and what they did in their communities. And so, compliance is very, stressful or you just have to kind of get to know it. And as I learned a lot about the regs, I'm like, this is so important because I liken it. These are my words, not ComplyAuto words, but I liken it to, it's kind of the unsung hero. Like, I don't know like superheroes very well, but like Green Lantern or Ant-Man, they're not Superman or Spider-Man.
Green Lantern definitely is an unsung hero. Ant-Man's gotten his day, but Green Lantern, like all the kids are like, who?
Who exactly? But
what's your superpower?
What's exactly? That's what compliance does, though, is it really protects that bottom line, that hard-earned dollar for the dealer. So, like Automotive, they have some of the best jobs in America. Like, it's kind of a secret. Like, they do so much for their communities, and all that can be protected by, a couple rules that get made or arbitrary, or some of them are very good. Like the safeguards rule, like, don't do this because the government tells you to do it. Do it because there's some bad actors out there that want your data and, like, stay up at night trying to steal stuff. And so that's why you're doing some of these things, is really to protect your business interest. So
Yeah. It's interesting because especially in the tech space, if you're aware of the tech space, you've got these two kind of like massive compliance arms when it comes to data, consumer policy, all that type of stuff, which is, your SOC 2 and then your ISO. And they have like really dug their fingers in it with getting tech companies in particular very compliant. But in auto, we don't really have that like regulatory balance for the massive amounts of data that we have in the DMS, the CRM, or the website, and the traffic that we have kind of coming through the walls of our data ecosystem. There's some things that can be done in non-centralized, like the spaces where tech can handle the problem,
right.
right? With website cookie banners or things like that. That's almost plug and play. But there's a lot more when it comes to like, oh, papers sitting around, computers not logged and not locked. Like how do you balance this, like ComplyAuto being and compliance being both a tech interface but also an activity
Right.
that dealer personnel embark in every single day?
Yeah, well, that's something that we have done, is like we've really tried to automate, like, so a lot of that back end. But it is confusing. So we've put a lot of time in making sure you have that personal connection too. So like every dealer's assigned a CSM, and they really get to know their CSMs, but we have to have those quarterly check-ins with the customer. Sometimes, like, I think dealers are like, oh, I have all these rules that I have to comply with. I'm done. Like, I don't need to do this for a while. And like, that's not how a lot of the rules are written, is like, you have to do those intermittent things. Like, either it's your risk assessment, which you were talking about, is like either physical or technical. Your physical one is you have to go around and make sure there's no papers laying around the copy machine, and like you shred right. And technical is, I mean, we can get into a whole podcast on that, but that's a lot of your cybersecurity. And like if you need a pen test or a vulnerability scan, or phishing, like I love phishing tests, like such a cruel thing. You send out fake emails to my employees to see if they'll click on a free Starbucks gift card. Like, boys and girls, if you're listening at home, there is no free Starbucks ever.
Doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
Well, that's the hard part though, because there are literally companies, like legit companies, that have built award programs for their employees.
Yes.
That reward them for behaviors with free Starbucks gift cards.
That is true. Yes. But
which is I think why the Fishers like put that lore on there, but yeah. I haven't actually ever seen or been a part of one.
It's actually
only the bad
freaky.
ones.
It's kind of freaky when you realize, like, when you go through this exercise of seeing where your information ends up, how many people, what they can extract from your information. I remember a few years ago, we used my work email address as kind of the entry point to like who has access to my info. Mm-hmm. And it was shocking to me how many platforms made the connection between me and my wife and my sister-in-laws and my in-laws, and like just how your information can creep out there. And then you think of the sheer volume of personal information that floats through a dealership's software.
Well, they're under the safeguards is they're considered like a non-banking financial institution, because think of like they know everything about you when you go buy a car, right? So they have a lot of data.
Wow.
And it really starts at the website. Like when you go on the website and like, there's so many great marketing tools out there. Like, how do you acquire a customer? How do you get that customer? And it can help on your website to put these tools in, like chat modules, but it starts at that website. Like, what is your website doing? And what information is it collecting? And are you giving the consumer that consent? And so that goes into another rule, which is privacy. And safeguards is one rule. It's kind of cybersecurity. I call it the Fort Knox rule. Like anything data you have, you keep it secure. And then privacy is like kind of what you're talking about, Michael, is what information is out there on me. And if I request for you to stop sharing that information. And so I think that's something that dealers need to look at is like, hey, on your websites, are you giving cookie consent? Do you have that little pop up? And are you actually giving real cookie consent? Some of them, we call them dark patterns, cookie banners, because
Ooh.
they don't have like a decline button. They don't really give you like consent,
An option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then how do they fire in the back end? Like, did it really like stop some of those marketing cookies? And when I talk about cookies, like not to get too technical, but I'm everything like pixels and fingerprinting, all that traceable information. And then are you protecting or have those disclosures and say like, hey, this chat module, we're recording it. I mean, that's technically like eavesdropping. And so we're seeing a rise in litigation with dealers that aren't protected with a cookie banner, that they're getting wiretapping claims. And it's like, this is an old 1960s rule. I just
Wow.
want to help them buy a car. So little things like that can help like a dealer protect.
Do you think too, like even if you have the banner, the cookie consent banner, and there's an opt-in and a decline, do you think as of today, I'm sure there will be more education in the future, and the online user will become hopefully more. I'm giving everybody the benefit of the doubt here. I don't think this is going to happen at all, but I was going to say, as we become more sophisticated, do we have to change the language of like, here's where I'm going. For the average internet surfer, do they even know what cookie means at this point? Are we even there with them yet? Because I know if I went to my great uncle Joe and said, hey, you have to give cookie consent, he's going to expect cookies to show up in the mail. You know what I mean? Like,
that is
no, my wife wouldn't expect cookies, but she wouldn't know what she'd be like, I see it all the time. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and kind of my point is, you see it, it gets in your way, so you're just like, whatever, and you just click to get rid of it. Do we have to increase our language, enhance our language so that the consumer really actually knows what they're clicking on?
Well, I think privacy as a whole, like there's a lot of education around it, like when you have Google or AI or Amazon is coming around, but a little bit of your language, I think we need to educate the dealers. But interesting enough, I mean, we help manage over 10,000 dealers' websites, so we track that. Only about 40% actually do that decline, and it's the baby boomers who tend to decline more than the Gen Z or millennials. And so that's probably, Michael, where you're getting is like some expect it, some don't. So, but it's interesting that baby boomers tend to exercise like their privacy rights more.
That's
because the baby boomers are afraid of like what you're doing with that data. The millennials and the Gen Zers know everybody already has it anyway, so I might as well get better ads.
Those
right?
boomers lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. They're not giving anybody anything.
They broke those wiretapping laws. Yeah.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Well, this has been fun, guys. I've really enjoyed talking with you guys.
Yeah,
it really has.
This is awesome. I mean, it really just opens our view of how much we do need to be thinking about this stuff. And I don't want to say this is the boring stuff, but for the sake of saying it, we're not talking about making more money. We're actually talking about keeping more money because you're saving on litigation and all of these sorts of things. It's often in these conversations where the biggest protections and rewards happen. And I know nobody ever wants to talk about being safe because safe doesn't sound fun, but at the end of safe is safety. And that's what we all desire more than anything. So, man, this has been so much fun. We're so glad that you could join us, Sherryl. Thanks for joining us here on Auto Collabs today.
No, well, thank you. You guys have a great day.
All right. I was nervous in the beginning of that. Like, how are we going to get from cars, guns?
What? Do you not know Kyle is the king of segues?
Is he? I mean, I have a button
I don't know.
here.
I think Paul's actually the king of segues.
No,
Maybe I'm the guest segue guy.
I think we're good sparring partners, right? Like,
there you go.
I think that's why we get good. I had a really good segue lined up for today's show, and then the second story changed.
Oh,
because there was a story about IKEA, and then there was a story about Kia, and you can't spell IKEA without Kia. It was the thing. Either way, I love this.
I'm not good at them. I'm
know.
not good at segues. I'm like, speaking of meatloaf.
Let's get back to the point here. The conversation with Sherryl. I'm the one that got us off track. I can't. I feel like what I want to talk about is all the interesting things prior to, like, the fact that she made her dad so proud, got me all the super duties I wanted, and now like
And
that
then
she
you
won't
got
work.
the guns.
They come for the guns,
So
and now
good.
get back to the cars. But all of that around, I think what it really highlights is like there's a really well experienced, sharp individuals looking at the compliance challenges we have. And even though, like you said, Kyle, like it seems like the kind of thing that
Can
you push
feel a
the
little
nerd
nerdy
glass.
or a little legal and maybe dry at some level. Like the passion behind it is driven by people that deeply care about the retail auto industry.
And the
right?
compli-
And
yeah.
that's something that I think we desire to expose in so many places. It's like, oh, the person behind compliance or chat or fixed ops or whatever it may be is a like well-rounded person that just cares deeply about this in this moment, right? And that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, it's like, this is really a bad one, but it's how it's being internalized in my brain. It's like nobody has fun going to Home Depot to buy a washing machine. But have you
Lies.
ever washed clothes by hand?
I don't know. I
I
kind
love
of
going to get a washing machine.
I like appliance shopping, honestly.
Wow, we're getting old, guys. We are getting old.
Sounds like a good Saturday afternoon to me. You got features and benefits and deals.
Nobody wants
Is
to
it the
call the plumber.
5.4 drum or a 6.3?
Kids, get in this thing. Get in this thing,
Nobody wants
kids.
to call a plumber to fix the dishwasher because you're like, really? Why'd I have to break in
That's
the first
true.
place? But
That's true.
you know you don't want to wash dishes by hand. And that's kind of like the compliance piece for me. It's like, okay, maybe it's not as fun as talking about get more leads for all the lead zombies out there. But you know what's not fun?
Getting sued or prosecuted.
Yes.
Kind of puts a damper on your day. Well, look, we hope we put the opposite of a damper on your day through whatever it is that we do here for a living. On behalf of Kyle Mountsier, Michael Cirillo, and myself, thank you so much for listening to Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?